Hey, here we go. Welcome. We are very honored to have with us the Associate Dean of the Rabbinical College of America, Chabad of Basking Ridge, my friend, Rabbi Mendel Herson. Thank you so much for joining us on our Torah in 10 interviews. I'm going to mute everybody. Don't take it personally. There we go. Okay, there we go. So, Rabbi, let's jump right into it. Can you tell us, at least briefly, the history of the Rabbinical College of America, how it wound up in New Jersey, and where it started, and give us a little background to the Rabbinical College of America.
I'll give you the background that's known to me. Some of it, I think, has been lost in history at this point. When the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, came to the United States, and he came to New York in 1940.
Came to Chicago twice.
Well, came to Jersey too. And he actually had his coming to New Jersey had nothing to do with the start of the yeshiva that we know of, but Newark was a frum community. Newark was a Brooklyn of its own, really. I don't remember. I was born in Newark, but there were riots by my bris, so it's like I don't remember it being frum. But they say there was a shul on every block and so on. So sometime in the 50s, we're not 100% sure, there began, probably with the Rebbe's blessing, I would imagine, some type of yeshiva, probably for younger kids. And there was a Rav Spitz, and I've asked my father several times, it was a Lubavitcher. I think he was like, not technically a Lubavitcher, just kind of aligned. When things developed into the Rebbe sent towards the late 50s, 10 Bachrim to learn, 10 older students, college-age students to study there. And my father, who had been in yeshiva also since 1950, and he was not yet married, in 1960, the Rebbe asked him to go to be the mashpia, to be in charge of the teaching of Hasidic thought in the yeshiva, this huge yeshiva of 14 Bachrim, which was in a house in Newark, which I remember vaguely. So that's the yeshiva was it was a bit of an outlet, I guess, for boys. The Chabad was not that large. Many of the senior leadership that Epstein and I look up to, they went through Newark. Some of them, many of them, are father's students, because there just weren't that many places, that many students to allocate. So having 14 students was probably, a graduating class. And my father took over the yeshiva. The Rebbe told my father to take over the yeshiva in 1965. And because of the riots in Newark, my father moved the yeshiva to Morristown. But he was 14 students coming out of a one-family house, and they were buying 14 and a half acres for 14 students.
Social distancing.
Yeah, it was not just 14 and a half acres. It was quite a complex of buildings. And that's how it ended up in Morristown.
So what year is that? What year did they move to
1971.
1971. So the yeshiva starts in 1950. It's 2020. It's 70 years. Do you have even a rough guess from 14 students? You have a rough number. How many students have gone through the Morristown Rabbinical College of America yeshiva over the last 70 years? A rough number.
I can go talk about Morristown more, because Newark you do the math. It couldn't have handled more than 15. But if you're talking about...
I was told there'd be no math on this test. Okay, I'm sorry.
If you're talking about 50 years in Morristown, and roughly we have different yeshiva streams, but even in the program that you and I attended, if we're talking about...
I just want to make a note that noodle incident was just a big misunderstanding, and I don't know anything about those broken windows. It was purely a case of a misunderstanding. I just want to be on the record with that.
You think you're going to get away with that one incident as the incident?
I have the mute button here. Back to the point at hand. Approximate number. Give us a rough number.
I mean, I would definitely say that it's in the tens. See, the thing is, we've actually tried to do that because just for our own knowledge of this. If you imagine that in the regular stream of the rabbinic students, and definitely since we started the smicha, which is now 20 years, we have 165, 170, it could be actually 180 every year. So every 10 years, that's 1,800. Now, we also have, depending on what you call coming through Marsden, we have Ferris Bachurim. We have every summer, we have 300, totally separate group of people coming through every summer. So, and a lot of the people, the shluchim out there in Illinois too, I'm sure, will say they didn't study, maybe they didn't study for the Shiva stream in Marsden, but when they were bar mitzvah in the summer, they were probably with us by us for YSP, because that's really been a go-to place for the past.
So let's talk about some of those things. You mentioned the Tiferes Bachurim program. Can you give us a little sense of when that started, what its objective is, what the student body is there?
The yeshiva, I think the yeshiva, as it's we call it, that you and I went to at we can call it the flagship program we have, is college age Talmudic study. So the boys tend to be between 17, 18, going to 21, 20, something like that. And that's all there was in 1971. In 1972, my father felt, because of the great need of what was going on with Chabad, with the Baal Teshuvah movement, and we had a lot of boys coming off campus with nowhere to go. My father assumed that was the right thing to do, and to try and make a yeshiva for Bali Tshuva, for people who had little or no background, but now they were interested. And my father did write that to the Rebbe, and we were looking through his files now, he certainly got a signal to move ahead with it, or at least to look into it. When things gelled and they moved along quickly, there was a bit of a rebellion from some of the parents of the regular yeshiva stream, because they were raising their children, their boys, as Hasidic boys. They had sheltered them. Here they're raising them in a house. There's no TV. I mean, they're trying to keep them as insulated as possible. And then we're saying that in the same building, in the same yeshiva, we're going to bring guys in who were just, smoking pot yesterday, or whatever they were doing on campus. And it really scared a lot of people. And my father knew that, and he tried to explain it. And the Rebbe called him in, which was not a usual thing, as Rabbi Epstein knows. That was not a common thing. He was asked to come in to the Rebbe. Of course, he ran. And when he went into the Rebbe's room, the Rebbe started to ask him, what's this idea about Tshuva Yeshiva? As though, the Rebbe knew what was going on, but he started for fresh. What are you thinking? And my father said what he was thinking. And then the Rebbe started saying, but people will have this concern, and then people will have that concern. My father tells me that he felt he saw a tremendous amount of pain in the Rebbe's face, that he had to actually ask these things. And each question that Rebbe had, my father answers. He was going to stagger meal times, it could be separate dorms. There was going to be enough room where we could take care of the Baal Tshuva boys, and take care of the Yeshiva boys, and take care of each of them in their needs without any conflict. So what the Rebbe said to my father was that he hears my father's responses, and therefore, he's in Yiddish, he's telling my father, should you decide to make this yeshiva, you should name it Ferris Bachurim. Ferris Bachurim means that the beauty of young men. And what the Rebbe told my father was because there is a precedent for a yeshiva with that name in Russia. My father still has no idea what the Rebbe was talking about as far as that's concerned. But the Rebbe gave the name Tiferes B'churim, should you decide to make it. When my father came out of the room, he was flabbergasted because he doesn't want to make anything. He wants, if the Rebbe wants it, fine. If not, he's not going to do it. And he spoke with Rabbi Jacobson, a senior chassid at the time. And Rabbi Jacobson said that what the Rebbe was saying is, it's on your head. That, he's not, this is not, he's going to leave this, he's watching, but it's got to be, do it, but realize that you're going to, it's going to be on your head. And my father started, and for the first year, he actually got no responses from the Rebbe about Ferris. And my father wrote every single week. The Rebbe had told him to write every week about all his programs. And then after a year, the Rebbe adopted it. I'm sorry, you were asking a question, someone?
Yeah, Nira,
Yes.
jump in there.
Good evening. My name is Nira. Thank you so much for joining us. One small question. Can you say, my father's students, you say a lot of things. Excuse my ignorance. Who was your father, or who is your father?
My father, he's a good guy. My father is, the last name is Herson. His first name, my name is Mendel. My father's name is Moshe. My father is someone who came, he was actually born in Brazil. And he was born to a family that's not Chabad, traditional, but not Chabad. And his father passed away when he was young. And someone in the Chabad leadership, I guess we would call Rabbi Weinberg, who would travel around the world.
His grandson is here on the bottom. That's Honey, is Honey Weinberg. He's being anonymous.
So Honey Weinberg's grandfather, we're actually related somehow. And when he would come to Brazil, he would go to see my grandmother. And my father was 15, and he was the youngest in the family, and without a father, and they were trying to figure out what to do with him. And he told Rabbi Weinberg that what his dream was to become a doctor. And it was hard to get into medical school. He wasn't sure what he was going to do. So Rabbi Weinberg, with a great Hasidic commitment to honesty, said to my father, you come with me to the United States, spend 1 year in yeshiva, and I'll get you into medical school. And I could have been paying my bills. My father came at 15, and then he became very attached to the Rebbe, and he has the yeshiva. He's the Chabad. To answer your question, he's the Chabad representative for the state of New Jersey, and the headquarters of Chabad in the state of New Jersey is the yeshiva. So his primary project all his life, since it began, it has been the yeshiva. That was, he represents the Rebbe, and that's who he is.
So let's take it back to Morristown. So Morristown, New Jersey does not have a long history of being a place of Torah and so forth. The yeshiva moves there, I think you said in 1971.
Yeah.
And now there's a whole community there. I mean, you mentioned YSP. We know a lot of the kids from here go there for a year, the Smicha program. Can you sort of talk about how the yeshiva was planted in sort of an isolated area, and now it's developed into a whole community?
Morristown was an isolated area at the time. So give you, there's a lot to say, and I think we went past the 10, but they had to move out of Newark. And I think that I do believe, and I can't document this, but I do believe, and I'm not the only one who believes, that the Rebbe used the yeshiva in Morristown to try to push Chabad and the frum world to a new way of thinking. When my father, he had 14 students, they had to run away from Newark. So he wanted to buy a place bigger than that house in a safer town called West Orange, which is where I grew up. He moved the family to West Orange. They were looking at this place. It was like a hotel, ranch-style hotel. It's perfect. And he moved the family because he knew it was all going to work out. Once they had their plans put together, my father went into the Rebbe with his board of directors, to the extent that existed at the time, but he certainly had non-frum supporters. And they went into the Rebbe's room and they put out on the Rebbe's desk the a drawing, a blueprint of the building that they want to buy. And the Rebbe looked at it and said, "This is not the place for a yeshiva. A yeshiva needs a swimming pool, a baseball field, a large auditorium." And this was for only for Hasidic boys. There was no Baal Tshuva yeshiva at the time. So the board was starting to talk to the Rebbe about what he wanted, and there was a gentleman there. His name is David Chase. If you Google him, he became very prominent lay leader of Chabad, and this was the beginning. David Chase was from the younger ones of the group at the time, and he said, "Gentlemen, I think the Rebbe is trying to lift us out of our limitations. We have to think big." And the Rebbe really liked that. And he called him to the front. He said, we have to stop thinking small. And the Rebbe told my father a few times that, people have to realize we left Russia a while ago. You could think in broader terms. So that week, the idea of the campus in Morristown came up. It was a Catholic reformatory for girls, but it was sprawling buildings, 14.5 acres, 15 acres, whatever. And they would never have looked at it. But because the Rebbe said, "Think big," they wrote into the Rebbe, my father wrote into the Rebbe, "Shai, think about it." And the Rebbe said, "Yes, look into it, and Hashem will give you success beyond any of your expectations." And they did pursue it, and they closed on it. And they closed on it in 1971. So they closed on it before Shavuos in 1971. They were going to move in for the new school year in September. And my father's birthday is Tammuz, at the end of about a month, 6 weeks after Shavuos. So he was on his way to go in to see the Rebbe for his birthday, to get a yichidus, to see personally, a personal visit. And he called David Chase, or David Chase called him before he left the house. And he said, "I'm going into New York. I'm going to the Rebbe. Do you have any message for the Rebbe?" And David Chase said, "Please tell the Rebbe, I hope he's happy with what we've done in the purchase of the land." And my father added that to his note that he would hand to the Rebbe, where he would go with Yichidus. When someone went to the Rebbe, they would have a note, and they would walk in and hand it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would scan it. The Rebbe read it very quickly. He'd scan it and then talk. So he scanned my father's note, and he said, the first thing he said was, "About what you write about Chase. And this is all in Yiddish. You should tell him that he is giving me nachas more than he can imagine, and that he should understand that what he has done or what he has helped to effectuate is not just for the Jews of Newark or of Morristown or of New Jersey, but that I hope," the Rebbe said, "I hope that other kosher meisdus, other kosher institutions will see what has been accomplished, and they will emulate it until he, meaning Chase, will see that his influence has spread throughout the world. And it means his influence was, he wasn't a frum man. In other words, his influence in trying to bring a broader thinking to our institutional, to Chabad's institutional needs. So we moved into Morristown. So then we had Ferris, we had the Temple Trim, we had the yeshiva. Then because the staff needed a day school that was appropriate for them, I went to a school that was not a Chabad school. I went to a community day school because by the time it got going, I was ready to leave to New York. It didn't get started until I was 10, and I left. That's when I left to New York. So, but there is an elementary school of 250 kids. Every summer we have 500 kids on campus between all the programs. We have a smicha program we're building. Rabbi Epstein doesn't know that, being that we were unable to properly fix the study hall after he and I left, we're building a totally new building, actually, for the yeshiva and the smicha program, which will probably be able to double our enrollment, because right now, at this point, we're turning away very qualified students, tens of them every year. So we're building 25,000 square feet. Hopefully we'll start
On the same campus, on the same grounds.
It's on the same campus. It's actually not going to be connected. All the ones are connected. If you look out the window from on the Aron Kodesh side of Zal, like Melchut said, you look out that window, those windows, you see just like nothingness, bushes and trees. That area is all being cleared out.
Fantastic, beautiful. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing about what life is like in Morristown and how things go from seemingly, the tiniest place to some, incredible impact. The students who learned in Morristown, including myself, my brother, many of the guests that we've had on our interview programs are themselves alum. Rabbi Gordon from Chabad at EDU and Rabbi Semen from Chabad in Arkansas, and so many more. And Yochel Michael Ochayel continue to go from strength to strength. Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time. I guess we can wish you good Yontif, because it's the 10th of Kislev, the liberation of the second Rebbe. So we ask everyone to join us tomorrow night, Parsha Insights, Thursday nights. Thank you again, Rabbi. And good night to everybody. And we'll see you.
I'd like to have you interviewed for my people. Just let them know they're actually Jews in Chicago.
A few.
Take it easy.
Anytime. My pleasure. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody. Good night.